Happy New Year to you as well. Tanisha, over to you to introduce yourself. No, Tanisha might have stepped away for a minute. Okay, Jay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Jay Bias, born and raised in Washington Heights, board member for over a year now. And I'll pass it on to Richard for introductions.
You just got Richard walking.
I am an additional masked marvel here.
Thanks for joining, Richard, right on time. Great. Radia, over to you.
Hi, my name is Radia Barnes. I'm a new member to the board as well as to this committee. I've lived in Washington Heights all my life, and I'm excited to see what we're going to do for the new year.
That's right. Thank you. Tanisha, over to you, in case you're back.
Well, fine, she's.
Okay, I think Tanisha stepped away. All right, not a problem. We'll go ahead and get started.
Michelle.
And then we also have Michelle, who just joined as well, one of our members. As well. Wonderful.
Yeah, sorry I'm late.
No, oh, good.
I'm Michelle, I'm a member of the Housing and Human Services.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ariel, should I do a proper introduction?
If you'd like to. What's your level of comfort?
I'm Richard Ellman, a member of the community board, a member of this committee as well as of the aging committee.
Great. Thank you, Richard. All right. Just 1 second. I don't know why that's off. I don't have to turn that on. Does it just need to be turned on?
Because you don't have a presentation.
Okay, then fine, then leave it off.
The
It's fine.
owl catches all of
Catches
us.
us. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Is that okay then with all of you? 'Cause it's just, okay.
I got it. So.
Great. All right, so we'll go over then into the agenda. Again, the first item here is, hey, Tanisha, you're back. Do you want to go ahead and quickly introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm on 2 meetings. It's a constant for me. Hey, Tanisha Grant, Community Board 12 member, and I am from the lower part of Washington Heights. Good to be here and be on this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tanisha. Wonderful to have you. So yeah, again, the first item on the agenda, again, we're not having any presentations today. There's a couple of things that we have here to discuss, but the first one being goals for 2024. I think there's a bit about just outlining what we would like to see and do. And I just want to kind of to open the floor for any thoughts to capture that, what are the things that we can do between now and June before the summer session. And then, we'll kind of see from there. Tanisha, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So one of the goals that I think I want to do, and I think that we should do as a whole, is to bring community-based organizations that are working on housing issues and human services issues into the fold to kind of, tell us about their work and see how we can collaborate with them in our community to support the work that they do on the ground. I think we really need that community-based grassroots feel of the people that be out here every day, especially when it comes to housing. So I'm really excited to invite some of my comrades, some community-based organizations that we partner with to come on our committee meeting and, tell us some stuff.
For sure. Thanks, Tanisha. And that's one of the things that I know the committee outlined maybe about a year or so ago. And I think we've gotten better, but I think there's still a way to go where we have had a bit more kind of, input from agencies. Sorry, I'm just seeing someone putting something here in the chat. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, so we have a bit more around, having agencies present, having presentations from our elected representatives' offices and CBOs. But I think as a committee, what would be super helpful would be for all of you to also share those with me. And I know, Tanisha, you recommended one that will be hopefully presenting at the February meeting. So I kind of opened that call also to all of you if there are organizations that you think, could benefit from, or we could benefit honestly from hearing about the work that they're doing, let me know and we can put them in on the agenda. You will have seen in kind of previous meetings, I think maybe not so much on this agenda because I did it really quickly and it completely slipped my mind. But there's now a standing item that normally says kind of monthly updates from elected representatives and community-based organizations. So one of the things that the way I would like it to be, I guess, formulated and would certainly welcome feedback is almost have it like a drop-in, so to speak. So if a CBO, a partner has an event coming up and they just want to let us know, they know that, the first Thursday of every month, they can drop in, there's an agenda item for that. Just come on and, talk about, your meeting or your event or whatever for 2 or 3 minutes. We're also open, of course, to kind of more in-depth presentations as we've had over the last couple of months as well. So thank you, Ebenezer. Take care. Good night. Great.
Maria,
Yes,
on
please,
that,
Richard.
our board president, Kathy Diaz, and I guess staff and others have been working on a newsletter.
Yep.
And other ways to get information out.
Yes.
It seems to, and some of that, I think there's room in there for information on community organizations. So I'm agreeing with everything that's been said, but saying maybe take a look at how to link that a little bit further.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great suggestion. I wonder if, and maybe it's something that we can bring up at the executive committee. Maybe there's a link that even within that newsletter says, are you a community-based organization? Come drop into these meetings.
Either that or
It's a good suggestion. Yeah.
not just, maybe, we should be possessive, but maybe this goes for other committees just as much. And it leads to a newsletter feature over, community organization of the week, of the month. Or
Yeah, I like
or
that.
5 community organizations of the month, just to present a little brief on. Just an additional way of linking the different pieces and making us feel more whole as we go.
Yeah, I like that. No, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. I'm just jotting that down here. Okay. And I just, for everyone's awareness as well, we have Norma. She is the project director for the Jewish Board and is happy to kind of join us at a future meeting for a presentation. So Norma, please do, I'll drop my email in the chat for you. And we can follow up and schedule a time for that. But thank you so much for joining this evening. Certainly want to have you present at a future meeting. Thank you. Okay. Anything else from other members?
Yeah, I got one other thing.
Okay, go ahead, Tanisha, and then I'll
A
over to
second
Richard.
thing, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Anybody that didn't talk. Yeah, I think that, and part of like why I want this, the group community-based organization residents to preserve public housing to come on, is because we have a lot of things going on with public housing. And I think it would be a great thing for us to educate ourselves on what the public trust is, what the PACT is, and what the RAD is, so we can better, assist our community members as, the housing committee.
Thanks, Tanisha. And that's something maybe that we can also work with Marshall. Obviously, Marshall, I know you're very active in the Dykeman houses, and you have a vast network of community groups and associations and things. And so again, really looking to all of you that have your various pinpoints and networks to help me and us identify and say, hey, I know a good group that would be good to present. Can they present at really the agenda is our agenda, and that's what I really want it to be. And so certainly welcome everyone's input for that. So thanks, Tanisha. Richard?
You just said one of the things on my mind, so that'll simplify it. Marshall and Dykeman are really central in that discussion.
For sure.
Couple of other thoughts. I'm looking at tonight's agenda, and I'm not quite sure what you have on mind on number 4, inward rezoning follow-up. But I really take that as a reminder that we've got a number of loose threads, things from over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
I'm a little hesitant because I don't want to do the discussion right now, but that you or all of us just look back at past agendas where we've done partial resolutions, or
Yes.
where we've done a major resolution that like Inwood rezoning, there were a tremendous number of community members who really were invested in the CB 12 process on that.
Yep.
I think we, you know, and one like that would probably be done jointly with land use. But I think we owe folks some follow-ups because I think it was part of who we were, and this committee was, that we landed a lot of places, but didn't always do follow-up. And I think it'd be really good if we picked up on that. And there are probably a couple of other obvious ones that are open. The other suggestion I'd make for this year is everyone seems to be debating housing policy one way or another, or at least if I'm reading the morning media right, you know, legislative ideas, policy ideas, you know. I know there's at least one of the five of us sitting at this table who's probably more deeply involved in that than the rest of us. Yeah, you might know the person. But I think we ought to engage there.
Yeah.
And while we had a similar discussion in a little different way at aging this morning, how much this board gets involved in legislation. I think historically we haven't, but I think this is one of the places where it really would fit the committee to look at some of the policy issues, understand how that fits the particular markets and housing needs that are Washington Heights and Inwood.
Thank you. And I know that we've discussed that in kind of previous conversations as well. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, we might not even have to look that far for our next one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and then certainly agree with you in terms of reviewing past agendas, and that's actually my thought process, and kind of, again, when I put this together, it was quite quick, so I'll admit that. But yes, there are a lot of loose ends that we have. And I think it's important for us to kind of revisit them and say, okay, what are some things that need to kind of be followed up on? Where have things landed? Those types of things. So, yeah.
I mean, on Inwood rezoning, I'll listen to where we are on the agenda tonight. But my gut instinct is that for the amount of time that went into that, probably some kind of update public hearing would be appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Thank you, Richard. Anything else on kind of goals for 2024, things that while everyone thinks, I just have one that comes to mind that I know has been brought up frequently, and rightfully so. We focus quite heavily on the housing side, and it's very important, and we should continue to do so. But there's also a bit around also putting a bit more focus on the human services side as well. So, and we have tried slightly. So, for instance, if you recall, we had the West Side Campaign Against Hunger when they came and presented. But I think to your point, Richard, it's great to have these presentations, and I think we should continue to have them. But how do we take the presentation and turn it into something a bit more tangible? What's the kind of the follow through and the action? Great that you presented, but let's see, kind of close the loop, so to speak, on all of that. Are you connected with the right partners? Following up with them, maybe it's, quarterly or, every 6 months, say, hey, I'm just using it as an example, but hey, you've now moved into the community. How is it going now with the new site? How are those, those types of things?
As you mentioned, the human services side of this, another way to approach that might be to take a deep dive on one issue. I'm thinking of mental health in particular.
Talk about that,
and going out of our way to get introductions. We've got a lot of mental health providers in the neighborhood and related mental health services to learn a little more, and be able to present it to the whole board or the community, or maybe it's a newsletter article, but find out a little more about who's doing mental health services in the community, maybe a little bit of what their history is. And I think I want to say this really carefully, as this committee has done what it's done over the last 5 years. We've touched on mental health issues. We've really focused an awful lot of our energy on one provider in particular. And to me, that's another thing we owe the community, is not to be in that kind of position. If we're going to look at mental health issues, we really should know more about the breadth of what's happening in the community.
For sure. Thank you, Richard. I'm just thinking back. I know last year, I'm trying to find my notes from it. We had a joint meeting with health and environment. And I can't seem to find my notes from it. It's somewhere in this notebook. And I thought that was a really good step forward because we talked about as a committee at the time, for our newer members, we said obviously there's a lot of intersection between health and environment, youth and education, a lot of the other committees. And so finding those points of synergy to work together on them with. I think the only thing with mental health, it fits more neatly, so to speak, with health and environment. Because obviously, and Steve obviously has been quite involved in doing that, and that committee has been quite engaged in that. But I do take your point on maybe identifying, as you mentioned, a particular issue and doing a deep dive. Maybe it's food pantries or, food insecurity as an example, or domestic violence or, something like that.
Yes, yes, and yes, but I actually want to push the mental health.
Push the mental health.
And if that's to be done jointly with another committee,
Yeah,
that's fine.
okay,
It's totally,
yeah,
the board hasn't always dealt with it that way.
correct.
But if anything, it's more of a human services issue than it is a health and environment issue.
True.
I will be careful where I say that because I think it fits both places.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. And I'm trying to see if I can pull up, I don't know, maybe Michelle or Jay, if you recall the meeting that we had with Health and Environment last year. I think it was last April, so it was a while ago. And I'm trying to see if I can maybe pull up the agenda to remember. But while I do that, I see that Tanisha, you have your hand up. Over to you, Tanisha, for your point.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback on the mental health thing. I would take it a step further to say that we need culturally responsive mental health practices in our community. For me, I live down in the 50s, 60s of Washington Heights, and as someone, I'm adopted. So let's just say from birth, I've had issues mentally, not for my fault, but this is what happens. And I can say that I went to mental health services in my community. I went to the clinic on 165th for about 5-6 years, and the services are horrible. While I was there, I had 8 different therapists because they only come to our clinics to do their resident. And when they're finished with that, they go on to the hospitals or whatever where they really want to be. So I would love to see what mental health services are actually available and accessible to our community members, because I can name 10 people now that are on a waiting list because there are no therapists available. So I want us to be really clear that, mental health services is severely lacking in our community.
Thank you, Tanisha. Fair point. Go ahead, Richard. Richard's in agreement.
200% support. And I want to take this layer cake we're building and add another layer on top of that. I mean, my initial words were focused on what do we have,
Correct.
with the thought that we haven't done much to get the word out on that. But it's just as much, maybe I'm repeating someone else, but it's just as much looking at the gaps.
Yeah,
What services aren't there, what services aren't there
correct.
in an appropriate way. And when we get a little further with that discussion, I have maybe some particular ideas that might speak to Tanisha's concerns.
Thank you. And sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can find that thing. Maybe I'll probably find it at some point later, in regards to the joint meeting. And so it sounds like there's a couple of things. I think maybe we can close it on this. I don't see any other hands, but a couple of kind of action points, so to speak, and kind of capturing what we've all discussed. One, we want to see kind of, continued bringing presentations or having presentation opportunities for CBOs, grassroots groups, tenant groups into the meetings, not just the agencies. We should continue to do that, but also a lot really kind of from the community. Again, certainly looking to all of you for your help in helping identify some of those stakeholders so that we can invite to our meetings. In terms of, I think, identifying the follow-ups, I think, yes, that's a key bit as well. So looking at those past agendas and seeing, okay, where have we started things? Where have things landed? What is the follow-up that needs to happen? So there's a bit of kind of research that we need to do. The suggestion on getting involved on legislation and policy issues, a point well taken. And I think in identifying where it is that we need to follow up, lining it up with any kind of relevant legislation or policy issues that we can kind of help push forward. And then lastly, focusing on the human services side, really kind of doing a bit of a deep dive on some of these issue areas. One, particularly mental health. Maybe again, it's working with health and environment again, talking to not just, the lack of access, but also the quality of service. Some other potential issue areas that we could talk about: food insecurity, domestic violence. I'm sure there are others, but just wanted to capture them. So cool. Some follow-up for all of us, but we'll kind of capture this and certainly welcome everyone's help in bringing this through.
About the mental health,
Yeah,
I just want to better
Sure.
understand, Richard, like where where the focus and the impact for the community board would be in mental health, like.
oh,
I actually would think, I have a fairly general answer to that, which is we need to educate ourselves, and that's the process of educating the community at the same time. Just isn't information gathered in any one place about what mental health services are available in the community. And of course, it's in addition to that point, the things that Tanisha raised over what's not here or what may not be here. And there is a little reflection going backwards, and I guess the comment to the chair too, that in making these suggestions, I'm both suggesting that we take a deep dive into the issue, but I think it's also fixing some issues that have not been handled well by this committee in the past, and that's why I think it belongs here just as much as at health and environment.
Okay, no, that's a fair point.
And you don't mean just like the focus on the beds at the Allen Hospital, which have come up multiple, so you need to be more broad than that, including
I mean, there's
private.
a significant number of nonprofit mental health services providers in the neighborhood. There is access to publicly provided mental health services in the neighborhood. There are, I don't really know what's here on private services, but I assume there is some, and that may be a little less of our concern. And as troubled as we've been by where things have gone with Allen Hospital, with Presbyterian's reduction of beds, in the context of Columbian Presbyterian, there are significant services there, which would also, I think, which is also part of looking at what's here and what's not here.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
All right, thank you. Good question. Sorry, I think I found the agenda. Maybe. No, I did not.
I think that's like a broader point on the goals. I feel like the committee, and maybe it's just me, but like I kind of struggle with like specific work streams of like, oh, here's a work stream that we as a committee are going to prioritize, and here are the people working on it. And there's like a lot of stuff happening all at once, so it's kind of hard to get a sense of the main priorities of the group, and then also to figure out where you can actually like contribute. And then there's also the fact that, we also all have jobs outside of this. So what is a realistic amount of work that we could do, and what are the things that we really want to prioritize? And like having that be super clear, I think could help us like really execute on those, like maybe a small set of items. Maybe we decide mental health and we really want to like go all in on that. Like then different people could get assigned different, work streams of that. And then we could all be super clear on who's doing what and really prioritize that versus, oh, we have like so many ideas and we don't know what the priorities are. And then everyone's doing a little bit here and there, but we're not really like pulling together like with intention and as a group.
Yeah, no, agree 100%. I think there's two things within that. One is, I think just there's also about space about that we need to be reactive to whatever comes to us as well, if that makes
Sure.
sense.
Yeah.
And so being able to respond to things,
Mhm.
but I agree with you in terms of really identify, okay, what are the kind of the pillars? And in my mind, I think there are two at the moment.
Okay.
One is, and we'll get to that in a minute, developments. So obviously we had 4095, the presentation from HPD in December. There's gonna be quite a few others coming down the pipeline.
Mhm.
Part of that also links into the inward rezoning as well. So I think that's kind of one thing. And then in terms of what I think and I suggest for the committee to work on would be one, and then it's item 3, really identify what is it that we as Community Board 12 want to see? What is the standard? What are the expectations that we are setting for city agencies, developers coming to CB12 and building? They need to be engaging with us. It's not just, oh, we find out about it. You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
this, for me, this joint resolution is a starting point for this is what we want to see, and this is how they must engage with us. And I'll come to that in a minute. So that's one bucket. The second bucket is around the statement of district needs, which I feel is always a bit of an issue. That's on the list, Tanisha. Tanisha, for those on not here on the Zoom, Tanisha just put a question, are we going to meet with Eliza, with, the Eliza development?
Oh, yeah.
So exactly, that's on the
Mhm.
list. Um,
I heard it's
But
like
the other point-
50,000 people on a waiting list already.
oh, yes, I've heard as well. And so the statement of district needs, so we always, as you know, September, October, we're kind of rushing last minute to identify what is it that we want to put forward in terms of the requests. There's a bit around us actually following up with what the agencies actually say.
Mhm.
And so for me, that's a second bucket of work. Then that's obviously something that'll probably be ongoing. And in terms of how I think we should handle that, and we'll get to that in a moment, would be around people identify, okay, who was gonna follow up with who? How do we do that and how do we manage it? And so, yeah,
For the budget items?
for the budget items.
Okay.
I
Exactly.
would volunteer to do that whole list.
Okay, we're writing you down. It's on the record.
That's fine.
Okay.
I always have to be calling agencies.
Not doing what they said what they were
Or
gonna
you
do.
could follow up with them, like directly and ask about each item?
Yeah, because we have an email for every person,
Mhm.
every
It's
agency
in the list.
Yeah.
list.
Yep.
So it'll be
Nice.
easy.
Yeah, and so I think it's just, how do we organize ourselves and making sure that we're organized, so, when we can talk about the actual logistics of what that looks like, offline and stuff, but yeah, those are kind of at least the two first big buckets that I envision. But certainly welcome, and I think the third, just probably a little bit, I guess, maybe ad hoc and a bit kind of like throw it all in, the bit of the follow-up, because there are so many loose ends on things that we have. And I wonder if it's, in terms of strategizing, maybe it's every month we identify that one issue that we haven't closed the loop on and we put that on the agenda item. And then next month, it's another thing that we haven't closed the loop on and we close that out. Those types of things. I'm just thinking out loud, but certainly welcome thoughts, from all of you on it, by next month or on email or call or whatever. So, sure. Yeah, thank you. So really quickly then, moving on to, I don't see, earlier we had someone from Carmen's office on the line, but I don't see them anymore. I think they have another meeting now. So the third agenda item is this joint resolution with land use on developments in CB12. So for context, this conversation came out of, or this item came out of a conversation that I had with both Kathy and Wayne prior to engaging with HPD on the 4095 side. So as you know, they presented to us in December. Before they presented to us, I had a separate call with them, kind of, getting an update in terms of what works for them, what is it that they're trying to do, how are they going to engage, setting up the meeting, so on and so forth. But what Kathy, Wayne, and I discussed, which I'm in full support of, is there's a lot happening over the next couple of years here. And there have been issues already with developments that are, have gone up or are going up, where they really haven't been as engaged with the community as we would like them to be. And so how do we course correct, so to speak? Because there's still time, there's still a lot happening for those that are now going up forward.
Mhm.
But also, to Tanisha's point, the ones that are currently going up, there's a bit around, okay, I see Jamila on the line too. Let me see if I can put, one second, Jamila, I'm promoting you to, panelist. Around holding them accountable as well to what they say they're going to do. So what we would like to do is this resolution would come from the executive committee because it captures kind of both things from housing and land use, but also I think it's quite wide or broad, excuse me, in terms of what it's meant to capture. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that we talked about that we would like to see in some of this. But I wanted to kind of make space for all of you for any thoughts that you might have that you think would be helpful for us to kind of put into it. For context in terms of the process, I'm going to draft it based off of kind of what's inputted here, and kind of that conversation that I had. I'll work on it with Wayne, and it will be presented to the executive committee. As an FYI, and we have Jamila on the line, we are also working with Carmen de la Rosa's office as well for input as well from their office on, you know, the resolutions. I just wanted to flag that. But some of the things we kind of talked about, and again, they're quite broad, a bit around inclusions on MWBEs in terms of in the bidding process, making sure that that's active, community engagement, you know, what are
Sorry,
the
what are MWB?
minority and women owned businesses?
Thank you.
Yep. So is there like a certain percentage? Are we just meeting a quota, but actually actively ensuring that in the request for proposals that they're reaching out to these businesses? Are they actually engaging with the community? What does that look like? Is it just a table? Is it, you know, an actual workshop? Those types of things is that, you know, we want to identify. We talked a lot about how designs of the buildings as well, making sure that they're culturally relevant, and then really kind of thinking about the landscape of Inwood as well. So we had kind of a couple of bits and pieces, and so I'll pause there. I know that Jamila's on the line, but I think Jamila, you're still on another call, but I just want to see, in case you aren't, if you want to say anything before I open it up to the committee. I think Jamila might still be on a call.
Yes, yes. I'm just, they're honoring 34th Precinct, Detective Christian Perez today. He's
Okay.
retiring officially, so I'm multitasking, but I just stepped out of the room.
Thank you, Jamila.
To say, yeah, of course. You kind of mentioned exactly what we have been discussing. We want to make sure that with the rezoning, obviously that conversation and that process was discussed before Carmen's administration, but it's happening now. We're seeing it now. All the constructions are going up, the RFPs are coming out, and conversation is being had now. So our office has been making sure that we're up to date with the points of agreement, with any conversation that the city is having with not only community board and our community members, but also the developers. Because like we all know, it's going to be just a percentage that is going to be affordable, not entirely, except for the Eliza. The Eliza is completely affordable, but the ones I'm referring to is like the one in the Inwood area, like 4095 9th Avenue, which is the one that we're discussing today. So I'm glad that you were able to mention the reso. We are in support of community board to putting that out. We just want to make sure that the language is shared with us so that we're all on the same page, so that when we have our follow-up meeting with HPD regarding how they're going to bring community engagement into it, we want to make sure it's done correctly. Because again, we're going to have at least 1,000 apartments coming to that area. And 4095 9th Avenue is just one of the developments. So it's going to heavily impact that community surrounding that area, which is Inwood, but it's obviously going to impact the whole Washington, or the whole District 10, and the whole Community Board 12 community. So we want to make sure that the community is aware, that they get to voice their concerns, and also that we're not putting in, and I'll say this in a like relaxing way. We want to make sure that there's not just a center that was discussed 5 years ago, and that's no longer a center that the community needs, let's say, right? There's always been a lot of discussions of like STEM and bringing that those type of programming into our community, which is amazing. STEM is very needed within our schools. But if it's being already done in other places, then maybe there's an opportunity for something else, like building workforce development or something like that. So we want to make sure that we keep the agencies on check and that they're bringing us into conversation, because at the end of the day, you guys and us are the advocates for our community, right? So we want to make sure that we're the line of defense. Do you want me to pinpoint anything else out, or?
I think that's it for my end, but just wanted to see just really quickly if anyone here has any quick questions for Jamila, noting that she's at another event. Any thoughts? No?
I'll still be listening and I can text in the chat.
Perfect. Thank
Speaking
you,
will be
Jamila.
tough.
Really appreciate
course.
you joining. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Great. So with that, I was just kind of jotting down some of the points that Jamila raised, but just wanting to see if any of you have any, just kind of while you think about any points, I'll share some of the questions that we thought or kind of raised in that conversation with Wayne and Kathy. One around really thinking about how does, this development contribute to the streetscape? Is there a plaza? What kind of community spaces are needed? So to Jamila's point, like, is it just, they're just putting a community center when actually maybe a museum is needed, or, what is actually needed, not someone just guessing what they think we need. They need to be asking us because we know what we need. But I think also kind of within that, there's, we had the presentation from Inwood Legal Action. That could also be something that we can put in the resolution, that they're really thinking about the racial impact study and local law 78 as they think about, the impact of these developments in our area. So I'll pause there and would certainly welcome any thoughts on things we should include.
I just second the impact study, because I wasn't here during the Inwood rezoning. I wasn't able to partake in that. But the fact that everything under the Inwood rezoning can avoid that is a little messed up. So I think just even requiring it, even if they're not required to,
Yep,
it should definitely be in there.
thank you. Anything else from others? Nope.
I just wonder who's gonna be moving into these developments? Like, is it people from the neighborhood? Is it people from other parts of the city? I just don't know how the process works. No,
Sorry.
seriously.
No, it's a.
I feel like that's an issue with every single type of housing where
So that could be something.
So
Go ahead.
there are certain requirements depending on the development, right? Like
Mhm.
5% needs to be from the community
Yeah.
board area. 5% of the unit should be available for homeless folks. Specifically for people who are like families and homeless folks who can't find a place to live. Because owners want to sell something. And then besides that, it's open to all of New York City. So anybody from New York City can apply. HPD has its own product. They have a whole 70-page document of how it's supposed to go, how the advertisements are supposed to go. And I went through the experience of applying for one. It's like on 157 in Broadway, Anna, or whatever it was called. I got selected after 2 years. But by the time I got there and I tried to appeal, it didn't matter, because the rules that they have are a little ridiculous. Of if you are eligible the moment you apply,
Right.
but if your income changes, you're
You're
no longer. And that's what happened to me. I couldn't. I was denied because I got a wage increase by $1,000. I was completely disqualified. It didn't matter.
You're talking about going through the city,
The housing.
housing law?
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
lottery
got it. Okay.
process,
Yeah,
because that's how they all are for the most part, unless it's a market
Correct.
rate.
yeah.
So I think maybe it's also helpful in terms of, as we think about the resolution, the scope of it. Is it just, for instance, for, kind of, in terms of, who are we aiming in the audience, so to speak? I think right now it's kind of HPD, future developers, community-based organizations. This is kind of the standard that we want to see. I think there is a separate conversation about how Housing Connect works, and it's a terrible process or system, because I've also gone through it, and it's like you said, it's years.
Mhm.
And then you find out, oh, actually, I applied for something, but my situation has changed. That was 4 years ago that I applied for something. It's like, it's crazy.
Mhm.
Like, how is that, fair or sustainable or equitable? It's not at all. But I think within your question, Michelle, is there something that we can put in the resolution around what the makeup of some of those developments are? And I believe it's called the term sheets that HPD has, and so that helps identify. So for instance, if the building's 100% affordable, or, X percentage will go to, certain number of families within this AMI, and how that's decided. And so I wonder if within that, maybe there's, two whereases or however many that talk about that as well, because it's not just, we want the building to look nice and, fit in with our landscape, which is important, but also, as you mentioned, where the people are ultimately going to live in it. Is it actually addressing the needs that we have here? Or is it also kind of, open to everyone in New York
I
City?
think one of the big questions you should always ask HPD is because every development is different only because it depends
Yeah.
on what subsidy is attached to it.
Correct.
Right? So we have the MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing,
Mm-hmm.
which are really stuck in their ways of like what AMIs you can use. But then there's other programs, there was the famous 421A that a lot of owners used, which created rent stabilized apartments. But it expired. It is something that was really horrible for tenants in the sense of, owners would partake in it, but would actively try to deregulate apartment all the time.
Yep.
Which is why the legislature let it expire. But the mayor wants it.
Huh.
The mayor wants it because it's his excuse for like, we don't have any housing. The
Mhm.
only way to do this is to give landlord subsidies. And then the question would be, let's talk to the nonprofit developers
Yeah.
who want to do the good work, and how do they do it? How can they accomplish it? Rather than these for-profit folks, right? That just make a promise, but don't really have to stick to it.
Yep. Super helpful. Thank you, Jay and Michelle, for that.
Yeah, I like your point a lot, because I think people may not know what buildings are coming up in the neighborhood, so they may live in the neighborhood and they're
Yep.
interested in moving to one of these new buildings, but they don't know, okay, when is this building going to be completed? When will it open?
Yep.
And Housing Connect,
Uh-huh.
what percentage will go to a certain amount of families in the neighborhood? And I have a friend who's like very interested, and he's like, oh, do you know about this building? Do you know about that building? He's a super, so he's also like, I'm interested in a job at one of these buildings. Like, can you like find out for me, like, when they're gonna start hiring, and are they gonna hire from the community? So I think
Correct.
those are all really good questions that
Yeah.
if we know, we can like share with other people who like in the community looking to move into some of, or work at some of these new builds.
Yeah,
Some of
really.
that falls on if they're required to have like prevailing wage and higher labor union. So like DC 37 has, or 32 BJ has a lot of the service workers, or DC 37 I think has like the people who are doormen that get a lot of nice money, and they get to be doormen all the way. Most of them are below 96th Street, but that's a union problem there, right? Because they'll say we want our members versus someone who's probably lived here their entire life, has the similar work experience they did behind it.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, but I wonder, to your point, if there's something that we can build within that, they should also consider in terms of hiring and things like that.
Yeah.
To the community.
Exactly, they did with the oh gosh, the one on Hillside, 37 Hillside, they
Yep.
came and they were like, here's our job listing, we'd like to hire someone in the community. I thought
Exactly.
that was really cool.
The other thing that you raised in your point that I think as well, and then I noticed Marshall, you had your hand up, just wanted to, Marshall, you still, Marshall stepped away. We'll come back to Marshall. The bit around when or the different times that they need to check in with the community. So it's not just, hey, we're building this building, help, inform the RFP, that's great. But also there should be, as you mentioned, kind of once the building is almost ready or once they're ready to launch on Housing Connect or something, that we would ask for them to host some kind of session of some sort for the community so that people can know, as you mentioned, that this opportunity exists and that they can apply and they can ask questions, find out if they're eligible, those types of things. So that could also be a point in there. Marshall, over to you. I think you had your hand up.
Okay, well, it's more of a comment observation because I don't know, as I go out in the morning, I'm still working and I see the different developments kind of they're looking close and it's really changing the I guess the silhouette of the neighborhood, so to say. And I happened to pass by the I guess the library site, and they do have a posting, and it's almost reminiscent of the postings you see in the newspapers as far as a grid, as far as the family composition and the income and the different categories within those type of things. And I don't know about this is the library site. I don't know about maybe what is that? Sherman and Broadway, and I don't know. It's the site that's going up by the 207th Street Bridge there. I mean, I can see it in the distance. It seems like it's all encroaching on the neighborhood in a sense that used to be kind of clear skied, at least that way by the bridge. But no, it's more of an observation, and I'll land here. Thank you.
Thanks, Marshall. No, that's a good point. I'm trying to recall, there was someone, I don't know if it was here, but someone had made a comment about exactly that, kind of the changing landscape of Inwood and Washington Heights, with a lot of the buildings coming up, blocking natural light, for instance, fresh air. So there's also the impact to people's health as well. And so that's, that could be something that we could also kind of incorporate in something like this. Richard?
I just want to do a little bit of a devil's advocate argument here, not disagreeing with any of that so much as saying, these are the old industrial and warehousing sites that are being used for housing. In a lot of ways, that's a pretty good thing. That's happening. And in terms of public health, we may do better with a high-rise building than with something that belches one gas or another, one chemical or another. I think if we wanted to learn a little bit about this process, it's exactly what's been happening on the other side of the Harlem River. It's all the old industrial and warehouse sites along the waterfront, and all of a sudden it's high-rise housing. I don't know well enough to know what mix of affordable and market rate it is.
Correct.
But it's an awfully good model for what an awfully relevant model for what we are trying to talk about.
Yeah, no, really good points. And actually it's on my list to kind of follow up with some of the other kind of CB10, CB9 that have gone through this, where obviously it's a lot more developed now. And see what are their kind of lessons learned, so to speak. What are their kind of points that they wish maybe they, would have engaged? What are the things that have gone well, things that maybe haven't gone so well that we can consider as we put something like this together?
Yeah, the one ad I do there is that maybe that suggestion is about Bronx community boards as well as the Manhattan boards.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion as well to read that to the Bronx CDs. Okay, great. Just noting the time, I think I have enough for a draft. I will work on this and work and then share it with Wayne. Again, this is meant to be, it'll kind of come from the executive committee. And so it'll be voted on there, but obviously I wanted to bring it here for all of your kind of input and thoughts. And so I guess maybe what will happen is once the draft is ready, we'll probably circulate it as well, in case there are any kind of other thoughts. I think sometimes it's a little bit easier to give feedback once something's actually kind of put on pen and paper, so to speak. Cool. So just moving then on to agenda item 4, and it's the Inwood rezoning follow-up. Not too much to talk to at the moment, but I did just want to share the NYC rezoning commitments tracker. Let me see if I can share it on my screen on this thing. Here we go. I think I've shared this with all of you before. But this website, it's on the, and I know we don't have that, so you probably be able to see it, but yeah, this is pretty much what it is. It's kind of the NYC rezoning commitments tracker, and it's done by the Office of Operations. And let me just, it's like an interactive map, and you can kind of see the different neighborhoods that have undergone rezoning, and you can actually, hold on, I'm just going to minimize this for a second. There. You scroll over. There we go. Inwood. Yeah, once you click onto Inwood, you'll see the map. And then as you go down, it kind of, outlines it into kind of 5 buckets. So housing, open space, community resources, transportation and infrastructure, and then economic and workforce development. And you'll see a lot of these are here. So one is, if you look at the housing, the first one being advanced affordable housing development on publicly owned land. That is the ELIZA. And it'll say kind of in progress, ongoing, and you can kind of read a little bit more about it there. And it kind of goes on and on and on. What I would like us to do, and then you'll also see, just for the purposes of our own kind of engagement or 4095. As HPD mentioned, this came out of the Inwood rezoning.
Yeah, we've been talking Inwood rezoning for the last 20 minutes.
Exactly, and so I'm showing it right here on the tracker. And so it's here, but I guess my point is that I would like us to go through it. And that I think that falls into your points around the follow-up that we need to do. So for instance, here I see explore additional opportunities for affordable housing on public land. Status not started. Timeline ongoing. HPD is responsible for that. So I wonder if that also kind of, have they been working, my question, just thinking out loud, have they been working with maybe MBPO in his Housing Manhattanites project and identifying, vacant lots? I mean, in his case, I think it's also private lots as well, not just public, but those are kind of the questions that I have. I was not involved in any of the Inwood rezoning, so I'm a bit of a newcomer to some of this. So certainly welcome those who have been involved in the process and have that background and knowledge. But again, to your point, there's some follow-up that needs to happen. The other thing I would add, there are a couple that have been completed. So for instance, there's a home-based office. So it's serving the underserved. That was done in December 2018. So there are a few that are done. And then there are others that are kind of done, but there's kind of ongoing work. And so that could also be a point of just checking in and saying, okay, how things are going. I know, Jamila, you talked a little bit, I recognize you're in a meeting now, a bit around the updates on the points of agreement. Maybe that could also be something that we work with on your office. Maybe it's, we can identify the appropriate timeline, but to actually help us identify what are the updates on all of this, because I'm not sure how frequently this tracker is updated. So that's also my other point, which I don't know. I believe it's supposed to be updated frequently, but how frequently is another question. So I will leave it there. Okay. I'm just looking at a comment that Tanisha's put in the chat around HPD expanding their workforce. So Tanisha, to that point, actually, there was a separate conversation that we had, I think, last year, where we were talking about the vacancy rates in city agencies and why things take so long and the impact that that has on human services. That was a point that we had discussed briefly with Carmen's office. And so I think, again, a point for us that could be one of the follow points as well. I know Carmen's very active on the, what is it, the Civil Service Committee?
She chairs labor. and
Yeah,
civil
there we go.
service.
Chair, I couldn't remember the name, Labor and Civil Service. Thank you, Richard. And so there's a bit of follow-up there in terms of how we can work closely with her office in support of reducing those vacancy rates, but also I think retention is probably a big thing as well. And actually keeping people in staff to actually do some of the work that happens. So yes, that's, I guess, my point on inward rezoning. Any questions, comments? Okay, cool. Awesome. Moving on to the next item.
Oh, sorry,
Sure.
Richard suggested holding, maybe like a public hearing or something like that. Is that something that we would do as a committee, or we would push, the office to do? Does that sound like something we?
That's something that we can help organize. So I think the first step is kind of getting an update on the points of agreement. And that would probably start with a conversation with Carmen's office. And kind of seeing where things are. And then we can identify, how that kind of shapes out, would it be, I would imagine probably bring in the relevant agencies
Yeah.
to talk about some of that. And to provide, like, as you mentioned, and Richard mentioned, a public update. This is where things are at. This is why things have stalled, or this is why it hasn't started.
Yeah, I would say treat the hearing idea as a possible outcome. First, I mean,
Of some of the work.
it looks like a good possibility, but it's still a possibility.
Correct. Awesome. Great.
I just wanna lift up, like, I don't even know, like, yes.
Hold on.
Oh, I'm
Hold on,
sorry.
sorry. Sorry, I just let me stop sharing for a second and then. Sorry, because I can't see the Zoom and so I wasn't sure. Okay, go ahead, Tanisha, sorry.
No problem, Chair. I just, I'm just thinking about when we talk about how, we know our city agencies don't have enough workers and have a problem with retention. So that's like a double-sided, very bad issue. If we put on top of it, the mayor's proposed cut to the budget, it just seems very hard for any of this stuff to move. So I just want to lift that up, that we have a serious issue coming down the line with the city budget and proposed cuts. So that is a big issue when we talk about the things that we want to see and the things that we want to get done when we're talking about zoning and housing and building and things.
Yeah, no, very much so. And I mean, there's a bit of work again around that we initially started talking about it, but I think it was right around the summer break. And so it, kind of paused for a little bit, but that kind of links it, I think, quite nicely into some of the work that Richard was highlighting that he would like, or suggested that we do a little bit more of in terms of kind of legislative support, policy support, really kind of pushing city council to address this and kind of push back on those big cuts and then the impact of what those cuts have, not just on housing, but really across all services across the city. Cool. Just moving on to the next item then, this is a statement of district needs follow-up. We talked about it briefly already. And so just for those who are on the line, so the statement of district needs, as you know, is kind of what we work on to identify the kind of capital and the budget requests that we put forward. And often the agencies come back and kind of give feedback on what we've put forward, We haven't received anything yet from what we've put forward in October, but we still have what was done in last financial year. And most of the items, if you recall, for the most part, we put them again, so they were duplicated. So there is a bit around kind of following up. Jay has kindly offered to kind of take forward or lead on some of that. So really appreciate that, Jay, and we'll kind of talk offline about how we go about it and getting those updates from them and so on. So yeah, and if I recall correctly as well, when we were having that discussion in October, either Jay or Emily or both of you, I don't recall, helpfully put together a spreadsheet that actually also captured those that feedback. And so you should all have it, but it should also be in one of the documents that Ebenezer sent when we were getting ready to review those requests. And we were working on that back in September, October. But I can recirculate that so everyone has that at the top of their minds or inboxes, so to speak. So just wanted to put that there. I guess moving on to new business.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So the
on
budget,
statement district needs. Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead, please.
so OMA, what is that, the agency?
OMB.
OMB,
Uh-huh.
that they're the ones that check out the, like, whenever we send in a budget item and they're like, we're working on this or whatever, they're the ones that are in charge of that? No,
They work with the relevant agency. That's my understanding of the process. So if it's under housing, they might say, okay, HPD needs to respond, and then the relevant agency would respond and say, like, we already have this in our report, in our budget, or in some cases, the response is need follow-up from community board, which is actually the case for quite a number of them, where community board needs to explain further requests, is what I've seen as well.
and all those agencies work together to make the statement each year, or?
So they respond to what the community boards put forward in terms of the request when we do the ranking, the budget rankings. So they respond and they'll come back and say, okay, as an example, thank you.
We have one, yeah.
As an example, we put here. Increase funding for free legal representation in housing court. HPD would then come back and say, I don't know exactly what they said because I don't have it off the top of my head, but they might come back and say, we already have funding for this. It's already covered within pre-existing resources. Okay, fine, but what does that mean? We can follow up and say, well, can you explain what that looks like? How many lawyers, as an example, are providing this, or,
Yeah,
so
I
on
guess
and so
my
forth.
question is, like, who creates the statement of district needs, that other document, the really big one that like just says the district needs of each, like, region?
My
That other
In the
document.
summary.
The summary?
Is it the
Not like
summary?
I think
not
it's-
like
I think
The
it's
other
actually
one
the
that says, like,
community.
what's going on?
Yeah.
I think
you
it's us
know.
as the community board, I think.
Okay,
I could be wrong, but I think it's us as the
and it's like
community board.
updated how often?
Probably yearly? Every
Okay.
year, yeah. But I can ask,
Okay.
but I mean, that's a good question. I can ask Ebenezer, but I believe it's the community, well, the staff,
Okay,
who kind of pull that together and kind of update it.
okay,
I
was just
to help
wondering.
give kind of the
Yeah.
framework of,
Mhm.
what's happening here in CB12.
Okay,
Yeah, no, good question. Okay. Moving on to new business, I don't think I have any. But I also want to note that, we have a couple people in the, some attendees in the audience, and I just want to see if anyone has a comment or anything. Thank you for joining our meeting. We have these meetings the first Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. As you see, we're also meeting in person, so certainly welcome you in person at a future meeting if your schedule allows. I just want to kind of give space in case you have a comment or a question for the committee. It's okay if you don't. Okay, I don't think I see anything. All right. Does anyone else have new business? Aside from what we've discussed? No? Okay. Yeah, I don't think they do. No, okay. Old business. I have one, if that's okay. And it's actually just a question for Indiana. I know that Indiana, you just joined. I'm not sure if you're able to speak right now.
Yes, I did. I'm so sorry. I had some very unexpected delays, but I'm here now and I'll catch up with the recording afterwards.
No, that's no worries, no worries. Thanks for joining, and I hope everything's okay.
Yes, thank you.
For sure. I actually just had one, just a question for you on old business. And it also relates, obviously, our committee as well. We spoke about this, I think, maybe a meeting or two ago around fire safety in
Yes,
buildings. And I think I had raised this with Eliezer from Public Safety. And you had asked a little bit, and I know you were working on it. So I just wanted to see if there was any kind of follow-up or how that was going. I think you were reaching out to the fire chief and asking about that. I just wanted to see if you wanted to provide an update.
Sure, yes. So we had the Public Safety Committee meeting yesterday, and we did not have anybody from the fire department present. And so we hadn't, my understanding was like the chair had not heard back from them. And so it's something that in this new year, we're going to be following up with them about and just making sure that kind of it's our, beyond our hope, right, is our expectation that they will come and give us an update. But we just hadn't heard anything yet, and they were not there yesterday.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. And thank you for working on that. And so I guess for context for others, so Indiana had raised, again, a meeting or two ago, in terms of fire safety, how do firefighters know that, maybe there's a resident or a tenant with a disability? Is there like a public marking of some sort that it may be a little bit difficult for that tenant to kind of escape, in the midst of a fire? And so that is the question which I think is a very good one to ask. So keep us posted on that, and then we can part of the follow-ups that we're trying to see, trying to work on. Thank you. Anyone
Sure,
else
and
have
if I
any?
could just throw in one other note, I recently met a woman who is also a wheelchair user, and she, I think, is affiliated with a group that's from Mount Sinai, and they were talking about organizing maybe like a fire safety class for individuals who were disabled. So I was going to see if I could get like a contact from her, in case maybe we could do something, organize like an event for folks in our district. And I could, inquire about like their language access, if they've got anyone who could come and do a webinar or something in Spanish, or if they have anything that we can even just link to in our email that goes out to the community, or on our social media, since I know we're trying to be more present there, at least as a halfway point until we get the FDNY to, engage with us more directly.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, and I wonder if probably maybe aging might want to get involved with that. There's a large number, a high number of kind of senior citizens that live in CB12 that use assistive devices, whether it be walkers or canes and things like that. And so, I think that would be great. So maybe we can reach out to Mary for the aging committee to kind of move her in. You gonna mention something? Huh? She would love it. Richard's nodding, saying Mary would love it.
So then I'll get the email from my contact, and then, or do you want me to like email my contact and CC Mary? How would you like me to approach that? I'm happy to do it on my own. I just didn't know if I should like CC you or anyone else on that email, or if it can be informal and just get the information from her formally, and then I can pass it on to you via email.
Yeah, maybe let's first check with Mary, and we can identify a date. Mary and Eliezer, because it sounds like it's like a kind of like a three committee thing, or a tri-committee engagement. And then I think maybe take it from there. But I think, you have the contact, certainly, at least from my perspective, kind of once a date is agreed, or, agreement, between the other two committees as well, then definitely go for something like that. I think, Emily, sorry, you wanted to
I was gonna ask, is Eliezer part of public safety?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he chairs public safety. Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. Super helpful for that.
Thank you.
Any other old business? Not seeing any.
Yeah, I got something real quick.
Okay,
So I think this is old business, or it might be new business. My bad. I'm still learning. But so I was on one of these meetings last night. Environment meetings, zoning. One of
Land
these
use yesterday.
meetings, and what the pantry, the West Side. I forget their whole name.
Yep.
You know who I'm talking about?
Sober.
It's business development.
Where's their name at? We're on the record. Oh, but anyway, they came and they talked about their 181st warehouse.
Yep.
180.
West Side Campaign Against Hunger.
There we go. West Side Campaign Against Hunger. Yes.
Uh-huh.
So, since we're human services and they're kind of like the type of warehouse that like people come there, they work with organizations, blah, 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 to get pallets of food for them to give out. Down like in the 50s, at the start of our district, there's really not like a constant pantry or a constant source for a source for food. So I'm thinking that maybe we can talk to them about maybe starting something down this way where people in the community down here can get fresh fruits and vegetables too. I'm thinking of Church on the Hill. They have a big kitchen and they serve the senior citizen community. So just wanted to put that in the notes and ask that we all think about that a little bit more.
Thanks, Tanisha. So that actually, which is something I'd asked, and I did never receive any feedback from the committee. So when they presented to us, I think it was in November, one of the requests from, I forget the president's name, and it escapes my mind at the moment. His ask was, can you identify or help provide a list of community partners that they could partner with to then help give out the food? Because ultimately the location on 181st is a warehouse. It's not meant for people to go there and get food, but it's meant for
exactly.
their
It's
community
meant for them to
partners.
give pallets to the community. Yeah, that's what I know. So I'm saying, like, I know a few community-based organizations that would, that do this all the time and that would love to take on that responsibility. And I mentioned it to them the other day, but I just want to, say it again here.
Yeah,
I think that would be good because we don't have that down this way and we need it.
For sure. Let's pick that up offline. If you could send me an email, then I can connect you with the contact. And then you can just, send the list over, and then I guess he can take it from there. And then that way. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on old business? No. All right. So with that, I get a motion to end the meeting. Richard is waving. Is that a proper? I think we need to officially hear it, right?
So moved.
Okay, so the meeting has been adjourned at 8:24 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you to our public members. Thank you, Marshall. Thank you to some of the members from the community that have joined. We hope you join the next meeting in February. Take care, everyone, and stay warm.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.